Buddy. Boy, it's quiet. Everybody must be tired or something. Let's see. I was going to mention a couple of things before we get started. Oh, yeah, on the bulletin, you may have seen it on here. We have it up here. I've forgotten to add Cindy's birthday. It's the 7th, right? All right. She's going to be some anniversary of 39, I think she said. So, yeah. And there was something else. Oh, yeah, we're having the child dedication on September 12th. I guess we're going to have it. I was supposed to have been getting some information, and I haven't heard from them again yet. So I told them I would like to have it by the end of the month. Well, obviously that was yesterday, so I'll send them another message, and because I'd like to know. I told her I need to know whether it's going to be 1 or up to 4. She said up to 4 possibly children to be dedicated, not just babies, but up to 2 years old, I think it was. But I wanted to know the names and the names of the parents, and if there were going to be any grandparents. So I'll try to ping her on that. They're flying down from Washington State. And it's Chris Bowling, and she wants to do it here because she was dedicated here as a young child. So I think when Peggy's husband Frank does that sound right? When he was here, I think she said that he used to counsel her with her or something, consult with her or whatever. And then you've noticed the October 4th and 5th, that's a Friday and a Saturday, the rummage sale. I don't know why I'm not supposed to call it a garage sale, but it's a rummage sale. So rummage through your stuff. We've got a whole room full over here and half of a room full over here of stuff. Will you? Okay. Yeah. We definitely got to have this sale. So I guess, are we still thinking we're going to put it in the kitchen and kind of have everybody come through?
Well, and we talked about if it's nice, we might even put a table or so outside just to attract more people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just afraid they're going to just drive by. So
Yeah. That's a good idea to put some outside. Hopefully it'll be nicer. It's cooled off a little bit. And by the time October hits, hopefully it will. So. Yeah, that's what we need to do. Anybody volunteer for that? Has anybody here ever changed that sign? I know James has. That's a real pain, I'm telling you. We're waiting for some rich benefactor to say, oh, here's $25,000, because that's what it would cost to convert that to electronic sign on both sides. And Gary kind of checked into that, I think, and said it was going to cost a little over $12,000 on each side. So, but that sure would be nice. Just come in here and change the sign instead of getting the ladder and getting out there. You have to open that thing up, and the wind's blowing, and it's pounding you on the head while you're trying to put those plastic letters up there. It's a real mess. I hate it. I'm not like the sign. Don't get me wrong. I just hate changing it. That's why you don't see much up there. I'm kind of lazy. Yeah, it is, because you got to get it on a piece of wood, or else it goes like this when you're climbing. Nathaniel's pretty good at getting up there and changing it, but you still got to have somebody else there to hand you the letters or take the letters down, and it's a mess. Okay, there's that. What else am I supposed to mention? I think that's enough for right now, don't you think? Well, let's have a word of prayer as we start our service. Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to gather and worship you, and thank you for the holiday weekend that we're celebrating, and just for the people that may be traveling or maybe out of town or just for whatever reason couldn't make it. And we pray for all of our church family and our blood family and our friends and our social groups and work groups, and we just lift everybody up. We lift our entire world up, and especially our country right now. There's such turmoil and strife and hate, division. We know that you're in charge. None of this is a surprise to you, but yet we just ask for your patience and your wisdom as we navigate through these troubled waters, and hopefully that we have your strength to stay strong and firm and follow you and believe in you, knowing that you'll work things out according to your timing and your will. So we ask you to be with us in the coming moments as we continue on in our study of Romans and sing some praises to honor your name, and ask that it all is a blessing to you. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Nixon? Oh. So you said it was Ron Nixon? Ronnie Nixon, okay. Oh, okay. So a long time, family known, friends. Okay, the Ronnie Nixon family. Okay. Let's keep them in prayer too, the Ronnie Nixon family, as he passed away. And before we start, a couple of things I was going to mention. We got a nice little thank you card from the Rosewood HOA, which was they were the first one, I think, that met here. Is that right? Oh, the second one? Okay. What was the first one? Oh, yeah, Foxalaire met, then Rosewood met, and then the Ridge, and they've going to meet quarterly. They kind of suckered me into taking that on too, but once a quarter, that's okay. If somebody gets a good impression, maybe they'll come to church. That's the idea. And then the other thing I was going to mention, Peggy sent me a bunch of information. I think she gets Daystar maybe, and CBN, and they're having the 7 days ablaze of prayer. She sent me some information about prayer. Of course, I looked at the letter that they sent her, 7 days of prayer on September 2nd through 6th. So that's this week. Well, that's only 5 days, but we're having 7 days. Maybe we're packing 2 days extra into those 5 days. I don't know, but certainly nothing wrong with praying for 5 days or 7 days or 30 days or whatever it may be. Every day. There you go. So I have this little pamphlet. It's got some tear-off things if anybody wants one of these little panels to tear off and remind you to pray. If not, well, that's okay too. I'll keep it up here, and if anybody wants one, in fact, I'll just put it down here. And if anybody wants one and I forget, you can come up and tear one off and pray extra hard on that day. Alana is at home with a migraine and bad asthma, so James has volunteered to help us with the music. I'm going to do the first one, then we're going to tag team, and he'll do the next couple. So we're going to sing Throw Out the Lifeline. It's not in the book. You'll have to rely on the slides because it's in another book. It's just one of the old, this is an old hymn if you're not familiar with it. We've done it here once or twice, but we got it out of another book. We've got some more we've got to do like that too, but we have to wait till Nathaniel knows them. So, okay, Throw Out the Lifeline. Oh song is talking about is the Word of God. Jesus, the salvation offered through his sacrifice, the forgiveness offered by God. So that's the lifeline. Well, let's stand and greet each other. Say howdy or hello or... I say hi again, yeah. whenever these things happen like this. So I asked Jeff if he wanted to get up and help lead the singing. He does play the drums, and he's musically inclined, but he said no. He didn't want to run everybody off, and I said, well, they don't leave when I'm up here, so probably you're safe. But the other thing I wanted to mention, and I forgot earlier before we start the sermon, is June Bowers Sparkman. Her test all turned out good on her heart, but I think I mentioned last week after Richard's passing, she's going through family drama. You know how family drama works with his kids and even her own daughter. So I don't know why that has to be, but it seems like when families die, of course, some of them are just, they're only interested in one thing, hope he had a big insurance policy or something, and they don't want to leave anything left for her to pay hospital bills and all. He was in, ICU for those last few days, and so she's really having trouble. She wouldn't want me to probably mention all this, but I just did, so just pray extra hard for her. Who knows how long she's going to have to fight this battle, but, it's such a shame because losing Richard he was just one of those guys that when you met him, you liked him. Now, if you didn't, there's probably something that happened, but I don't know about, but he never gave me any reason to not like him. He was just a wonderful guy, and of course, June's the same way. She'd give you the shirt off her back, She's just that way. That's why she was so successful in business and everything, I believe. So anyhow, just wanted to mention to pray for June. Now, the title of the sermon today is, what we have here is a failure to communicate. Does anyone recognize that phrase? Okay. What, do you know the movie? Cool Hand Luke with, what's his name? Not Robert Redford. What's his name? Huh? Yeah, Paul Newman. He was in that movie, and he kept escaping from prison, and the warden kept he kept getting caught. And the warden would give him this big lecture about not trying to escape. And the warden would always say, what we have here is a failure to communicate. I'm sure the warden or whoever made the movie didn't know that they were almost quoting Paul. Paul had trouble with the failure to communicate. As we're starting Romans 10 today. And we talked about that in the last 2 or 3 weeks, going through the last part of chapter 9, Paul talking about the communication problem with Israel. So, but I like that movie, Cool Hand Luke. It just expresses this. What we have here is a failure to communicate. That became kind of a catchphrase back in those days. And it's still a problem today, I think. Have you ever had a problem at work and somebody misunderstood, or you said something, in this days of text messages and all this and that, the inflection of your voice and the tone of your voice gets lost in a text message, and you could have thinking it in a friendly tone of your voice while you're typing it. The other person reads it and said, I can't believe they said that to me, A failure to communicate. We still have that problem. However, everything's perfectly clear in a court of law, isn't it? Oh, I hear several laughs. You would think that everything would be spelled out, everything's defined, everything's in order in a court of law, all the way back to the Roman Empire, which is where a lot of our laws started, up through English law and on now to our modern day American law, which is based on so many of the phrases used in the law are of Latin origin. But we just don't know how to communicate so much. If a judge doesn't understand or doesn't know what to do with the case, he relies on precedent, past rulings, and say, okay, this is the way it's been handled in the past. They've set the precedent as to what this particular thing means, so we don't have to worry about communicating a new meaning for it. Let's rely on the previous terms. But that's not always the case. I read about a woman that came to court. She told the judge she wanted a divorce. The judge said, "Do you have any grounds for a divorce?" She said, "Grounds? We have about 2 acres." The judge said, "Lady, that's not what I'm talking about. What I mean is, do you have a grudge?" The woman thought for a moment and replied, "Garage? No, we park our car out front of the house." By now, the judge was getting a little frustrated. He sort of snapped at her and said, "Ma'am, does your husband beat you up?" She said, "No, I usually get up before he does every morning." The judge practically yelled at her, "Lady, why do you want a divorce?" The woman looked at the judge and replied, "Judge, me and my husband just don't seem to be able to communicate." Now, as we look at these first 13 verses of Romans, and we obviously won't get anywhere near being done with it today, especially if I keep telling silly stories like this. Paul has had a failure to communicate, and we talked a little bit about that the last couple of weeks, about how we earn God's righteousness. You know, if I remember right, it was in chapter 7 or chapter 8, Paul spent a lot of time on how we're made right with God. God's righteousness, that is. It's through faith. It's not through keeping the law. Paul hits this topic so much, and we're going to go over a little bit of it again. It must have been really important. Communication must have been a real problem back in those days. You know, Israel, we talked last week and the week before about Israel rejected God's laws. They accepted God's laws, but they accepted it as the way for salvation, and they rejected God's provision for salvation, which was the sacrifice of Jesus, the death and resurrection of Jesus. Israel rejected God's righteousness. They were trying to earn their righteousness, but it just wasn't possible. Paul, though, kept trying to communicate with them. The desire of his heart and his prayers offered in Israel's behalf were focused so much on this very thing. He desired salvation for the Israelites, for the nation. Let's look at the very first verse out of Romans 10. "Dear brothers and sisters, the longing of my heart and my prayer to God is for the people of Israel to be saved." So he made it pretty plain right there. He just wanted them to accept God's offer of forgiveness through the salvation provided by Jesus. But he kept telling them, and they kept trying to live according to the law, trying to earn their righteousness. There was definitely a failure to communicate between Paul and their understanding of everything. That's what the problem was. Everything they believed was based on their understanding, not on the fact of what the law of Moses was for. Paul took the high ground in all these discussions and these writings that we have because he spoke by the divine inspiration of the Spirit. Remember, the disciples spent time with Jesus, but Paul was on the road to Damascus, and he wasn't part of the disciple group. He was a highly educated man. He was a Jewish person, but he had reached a high level in the education in the Roman society. He was a citizen of Rome also. God got his attention in a big way. On the road to Damascus, God struck him blind for 3 days. That would get my attention, especially if I had the sense that God was talking to me. And if we read, and I didn't look it up, we read it but past that point, Paul spent, I think, several weeks spending time with God, being taught by God. So he spoke with divine inspiration. He's talked about that in some of his other writings, different than this letter to the Romans that he wrote. Regardless of how Israel wanted to accept it or reject it, Paul was speaking the truth from the divine inspiration of God. He was given that, and he he was the guy that God chose to deliver that message. Remember, we talked a few weeks ago about the remnant in Israel, those that would believe Jesus is the Messiah, and those then out of the Israelites, the bigger group of the nation of Israel, that so many just believed that, well, Jesus was probably a pretty good guy. He was certainly a good teacher. And that still exists today. There's groups of Jewish people that believe in Jesus, and there's a lot of people, Jewish groups, that don't. Well, what's different than our own society? Only it may be even more pronounced in our society today. There's relatively few people that believe in Jesus. There's untold numbers of people that reject God, reject Jesus. They want to take God. In 1963, they wanted to take prayer out of schools, and it's progressed from there. We've taken God out of the schools. We've taken God out of the system of government. We've taken God out of the social circles. We've taken him out of everything. We want to get rid of God. It's funny if we compare how we've taken God out of everything, but we compare crime, violence, corruption, greed. It goes up. Conversely, with the amount of how we've taken God out of society. But look at our government today. And I'm not going to make a partisan comment here, but just look at our government. I mean, neither party is absolute saints, but they want to tax you. I said I wasn't going to get political, but part of what they want to do if we continue down the path we're going down is to tax you on the unrealized gains. What value did your house gain in the market? If you've owned your house for 20 years, it may have gone up. I know we bought our house, 17 or 18 years ago, one of the two. 2006, whatever that is, that's 18 years now. And they've estimated it. You get on Zillow and some of those realty places, and they estimate it is nearly $100,000 more than it was. I don't know if that's right or not, but so under those plans, I would have to pay tax on that $100,000. Never mind if another 2009 comes along and everything crashes and it goes way back down. I've already had to pay unrealized gains taxes. And I say that not to deliver a partisan message, but to say, look at the corruption in our government. They're going to come up with ways to tax you more, take more of your money to support the ruling elites and leave you in the dirt. Well, that's exactly what was happening in Paul's day. They were oppressed by the Romans. The Israelites, as God's chosen people, were picked on especially, I think, because of that, because God chose them as his people. And everybody else was either jealous or hated God or something, and they wanted to say, well, Israel isn't God's chosen people. We're going to really let them have it. Well, God didn't choose them to be special or choose them to be better people. He chose them to be examples. And as I've said quite a few times, I don't want to be God's example. I want to be chosen by God, but not to be an example to the world, because that means I'm going to have more of a rough time, because that will mean that God gets to show his mercy and his grace on me even more, but I'll have to go through those difficulties in the meantime in that process. Well, the inability of Paul, I got kind of off track here, didn't I? I do that often, chasing those rabbits. The inability of Paul and Israel to communicate was not the fault of Paul. It was the fault of the nation of Israel for refusing to accept what he had to say. He continued to try to communicate in this chapter 10 that we're just now starting. Let me read the second and third and fourth verses out of Romans 10. I know what enthusiasm they have for God, talking about the Israelite people, but it is misdirected zeal, for they don't understand God's way of making people right with himself. Refusing to accept God's way, they cling to their own way of getting right with God by trying to keep the law. For Christ has already accomplished the purpose for which the law was given. As a result, all who believe in him are made right with God. Paul keeps hammering on that theme because they don't listen. They didn't listen to him back then, and our world today still doesn't want to hear about that. Christ already accomplished the purpose of the law. And I don't know if I mentioned it last week. I know we're going to get down to it. I see in my notes here what the purpose of the law was. But I'll get to it in a little bit. Israel was just misinformed. Paul talked about the great zeal they had. He said, I know what enthusiasm they have for God. But they were misinformed, and zeal without the knowledge of the will of God is just misdirected. It can be disastrous. Their misdirected zeal led them to persecute Paul and the other Christians. You know, Paul wanted to kill the Christians when he was following his society that he grew up in. But then when he switched, when God got a hold of him and said, I want you to be the guy, he didn't say to write all of the New Testament, half of the New Testament, but he said, I want you to follow me. And Paul began. Then Paul and the other Christians were persecuted. Some to the point of being put to death. If you go back and read the history of the disciples, they all died a cruel death. What cruel? Well, it was cruel. Some of them were hung upside down, crucified upside down. John the Baptist, of course, John was beheaded because the ruler's princess wanted his head on a platter. So I couldn't think of some heads I'd like to have on a platter, but I don't want to do that because you would never see me again. I'd be locked away in some prison somewhere. Well, Paul writing to the church at Philippi, we can read in Philippians 3, verses 1 through 3. In conclusion, my brothers, delight yourselves in the Lord. There's a chorus about that. I don't know if we've ever sung that here. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Is that familiar to anybody? We'll have to sing that someday. Put that on the list then. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Well, okay, I was starting to read Philippians 3, 1 through 3. In conclusion, and that's not me saying in conclusion, don't get excited. In conclusion, my brothers, delight yourselves in the Lord. It doesn't bore me to repeat a piece of advice like this. And if you follow it, you will find it a great safeguard to your souls. Be on guard against these curs, which is a dog. You know, dogs back then weren't all little cute house pets like they are now, jump up in your lap. They may jump up in your lap, but probably to get your throat. So be on guard against these curs, these wicked workmen, these would-be mutilators of your bodies. We are, remember, truly circumcised when we worship God by the Spirit, where we find our joy in Christ Jesus and put no confidence in what we are in the flesh. He's talking about the mutilators of their bodies. They wanted to show, they wanted to practice circumcision back in those days to show what religious, pious people they were. But Paul was talking here, as he wrote to the church in Philippi, that we're truly circumcised when we worship God. That is, God strips all those extra things away from us and leaves us only desiring the things that he wants for us. Our desires change from worldly things to things that please God, that fit in with his will. Now, are we completely free of those worldly things? Why, no. We always get temptations and distractions. That's Satan throwing those out at us, hoping to draw us off track. Even if he can't do anything about us because we're saved and we're Christians and we followed Jesus and accepted God's forgiveness, he can maybe cause us to stumble and throw somebody else off. Cause somebody else to think, well, if they can do that and they claim to be a Christian, well, I can do that even more. We studied that here. Paul wrote about that about 2 or 3 chapters ago. People were saying, well, can't we just keep on sinning and that'll give God a chance to show greater mercy and grace? Paul said, absolutely not. I don't know if you guys remember reading that a few weeks ago. Absolutely not. You were saved from sinning, he says. He said, put no confidence in what we are in the flesh, only are worshiping God by the Spirit, as Paul just said in that letter. Well, why was Israel so misinformed? We touched on that in the last week or so, but we didn't really explore it as much as Paul does now. God had communicated to Israel his law, and they thought that by following that, that was going to make them right with God. But that's not why he gave them that. They had witnessed even the righteousness of God through Jesus Christ, and they still rejected that. Paul made every effort to communicate God's message to them, but they just wouldn't listen. Romans 3:2 said, the Jews were entrusted with the whole revelation of God. In other words, Paul was saying back then, there in that chapter, the law was given by God as a revelation of his righteousness. That is, his standards of being made righteous, of being called a follower of Jesus, a follower, a Christian, a follower of God. By his law, by God's law, all people are shown to be sinners. Romans 3:19-20, which we covered probably, who knows, Romans 3, that had to be last year sometime. Obviously, the law applies to those to whom it was given, for its purpose is to keep people from having excuses and to show that the entire world is guilty before God. For no one can ever be made right with God by doing what the law commands. The law simply shows us how sinful we are. I said before we were going to get to that here pretty soon, and you were thinking, yeah, right, we know how you do. I got to it. Paul said the law simply shows us how sinful we are. That's why God gave us the law, not to give us a way of righteousness, to give us a way of being accepted into heaven for eternity. The law was given to show us how much we can't keep it. It was given to show us how sinful we are. It bears witness in that frame of reference to the righteousness of God in the person of Jesus Christ. Continuing on a couple more verses back in Romans 3. But now God has shown us a way to be made right with him without keeping the requirements of the law, as was promised in the writings of Moses and the prophets long ago. We are made right with God by placing our faith in Jesus Christ. And this is true for everyone who believes, no matter who we are. Well, there's Paul again saying that God has shown us how to be made right with him. And it's not by keeping the requirements of the law. Now, does that mean we should just throw the law out? No, I think if everybody pulls up to the stop light and everybody goes through, somebody's going to crash. Same kind of a thing with all of the law. It's a pretty poor analogy, I know, but bear with me. I come up with these things while I'm standing up here rambling on. The law was to show us how sinful we were, not a way to heaven, not a way to righteousness for eternity. God showed us how to be right with him. We don't throw the law away. Jesus said, I didn't come to get rid of, well, I think that's in my notes farther on too. Let me get a little bit further and we'll get to that part too, what Jesus said about the law. But we know here that Paul was saying it was to define sin so that we could recognize what it is, what sin is, our need for Jesus. Romans 7:7, which we would have read 2 or 3 months ago. Well then, am I suggesting that the law of God is sinful? Of course not. In fact, it was the law that showed me my sin. I would never have known that coveting is wrong if the law had not said, you must not covet. That's Paul quoting one of the 10 Commandments, Exodus 20:17 and Deuteronomy 5:21. Say that exact thing, and that was Paul quoting them. And he said, without that direction of the law, he probably wouldn't have known it was wrong. Now, I think he's making a point there, and I think that we would all know that coveting or taking something that's not ours, steal, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not covet, thou shalt not commit murder. We'd probably know that most of those were wrong, but I don't know. Paul says he wouldn't have known except that God said, those things are wrong. The only thing that was really positive with the promise out of the 10 Commandments was the one that said, honor thy father and mother, for it will be well with you. I can't remember, I just, my own little thing, translation here. It's not a translation, it's my own little reference. But the only one with a promise, honor your father and mother, and it will go well with you. Otherwise, no. The law was spiritual, according to Paul. Reading on later on in Romans 17 from the verse we just read. So the trouble is not with the law, for it is spiritual and good. The trouble is with me, for I am all too human, a slave to sin. The law is holy, righteous, and good. Romans 7:12 said, the law itself is holy, and its commands are holy and right and good. Paul even says our failure to live up to the standards of the law demonstrates the weakness of our flesh and the evil of sin. No matter what we do, Christian, whatever, sin is going to come at us. And if we're a Christian and we're not living right, sin won't be as viciously attacking us as if we're doing the right thing and people can see that there's something different about us and we tell them about Jesus, or we just live for him and stand up for what's right. Satan's going to throw extra things in our path to take us down the wrong path, to cause us some problems. Here's what I love this part, that what Paul said, and I only picked out the first part of it in verse 21 of that Romans 7. I have discovered, well, let me back up. I didn't read Romans 7:17. But if I do what I don't want to do, I am not really the one doing it. It is sin living in me that does it. I have discovered this principle of life, that when I want to do what is right, I inevitably do what is wrong. You ever been there? You do what's right, and you wanted to do what's right, and you didn't. You did what was wrong. You said the wrong things. You did the wrong things. I can think of instances, and I'm not going to tell about them up here, because I don't want to embarrass myself when I've said things that, before. I was kind of like Peter. I feel a little bit like Peter. Peter was the one that always stuck his foot in his mouth. He was always quick to say, oh, let's do this, let's do that. And Jesus, I think, would kind of look at him and go, really? Peter? Think. Jesus didn't ever say that exactly. Jesus has a lot more mercy than any of us probably would. Paul tells us, though, in these various scriptures we've read, that the law's requirements are met by those who walk according to his Spirit, who follow his laws and the Spirit's leading. We accept what Jesus offered us, forgiveness. We accept God's law and follow that law. And I said we'd get to that later. I'm not sure we're going to make it today quite. But since we're not going to quite make it today, I've told you that before, and you all well know this. Jesus said, I haven't come to abolish the law. I've come to deepen it. I've come to fulfill it. My purpose was to complete the law. He didn't come to do away with it. And I did away with a lot of the little religious things that the leaders, the so-called leaders, religious leaders had come up with. Rules and regulations, needless rules and regulations. You've probably dealt with companies, governments, whatever, that had a lot of needless rules and regulations to where you couldn't really get anything done because you had to jump through so many hoops. That's the way the religious leaders of Jesus' day were. You notice Jesus never condemned, never railed against the actions of the government. He just thought, I think he said something to the effect over time to the disciples that the government's going to do what it's going to do. He got after the religious leaders, those who taught the law and those who wrote the law, that is, interpreted it and copied it so they would have more copies of the law, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. He got after them and said, you're the blind guides, the blind leading the blind, sort of. The people look to you for religious instruction, and you're just showing them how high and righteous and mighty you are by coming up with a bunch of laws that nobody can follow. Paul said in Romans 8, 3-4, which we also covered several weeks ago, the law, and this is all related to our topic that he covers in 10, is why I keep going back to some of these select verses. The law of Moses was unable to save us because of the weakness of our sinful nature. So God did what the law could not do. He sent his only Son in a body like the bodies we sinners have. And in that body, God declared an end to sin's control over us by giving his Son as a sacrifice for our sins. He did this so that the just requirement of the law would be fully satisfied for us who no longer follow our sinful nature, but instead follow the Spirit. Paul also said, not only did Jesus end sin's control and satisfy the requirements of the law for us, not do away with the law, but satisfy the requirements to offer us forgiveness and salvation. He also said that those who love each other, a church family, a regular family, friends, neighbors, whatever, they will try to fulfill the law also. Romans 13, jumping ahead a few chapters, verses 8-10. If you love your neighbor, you will fulfill the requirements of God's law. For the commandments say, you must not commit adultery, you must not murder, you must not steal, you must not covet. That's, again, references back to Exodus 20. These and other such commandments are summed up in this one commandment. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to others, so love fulfills the requirements of God's law. Here we're going to get to it after all, that second thing I said we were coming to, what Jesus said about the law in Matthew 17-18. Don't misunderstand why I have come. I did not come to abolish the law of Moses or the writings of the prophets. No, I came to accomplish their purpose. I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth disappear, not even the smallest detail of God's law will disappear until its purpose is achieved. Now that is out of the New Living Translation. If you read that out of the King James and some other translations, it will say, not even a jot or a tittle will disappear out of God's law. The jot and the tittle, one of those is like if you write an I and you put the dot at the top of the I, that's one, either the jot or the tittle. I'm not sure which of those two. But not even the smallest detail will disappear. Jesus didn't, he said, I didn't come to abolish the law. I came to accomplish it. Take care of it for you. The righteousness the law demands, Jesus took care of, and he offers it to all of us as sinful humans, sinful people. Jesus produces righteousness in those who believe and obey him. Well, I think I'll stop right there instead of moving on to the problem with communication. We got a good start on the failure to communicate. Now you guys can go home and watch Cool Hand Luke or something and catch that phrase and whatever, or you don't have to, obviously. I'm just being silly. But we'll pick up and finish up this little section about the problem with communication next week. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, we thank you so much for your guidance and instruction, your word that's been preserved for us, for appointing a man like Paul and the disciples who wrote nearly all of the New Testament for us and preserving it for us that we could use it as a guideline for our life. Help us to put into practice the things that we talk about not worrying about salvation through accomplishing the law, but knowing that you took care of it, and all we have to do is believe in you and accept your offer of forgiveness, and you'll usher us into heaven on that day that we pass from this life to the next. So we pray that as we go out, we represent you in a manner worthy of you this week, and we thank you for the opportunity to do that. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, we'll end with a song. Did you want me to do this one? Or James, did you want to? This Joy That I Have. You know that one? I can do it or you can do it, whichever you prefer. Come on up, yeah.